Okay, welcome everyone to this live social media event on Facebook. We're just going to get started here and allow people to join the chat before beginning the presentation. We're going to wait a couple of minutes and allow people to sign in and start viewing. I'm Christian Bates Hardy. I'm a communications consultant with the Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association. And I'm joined in the recording studio today by Ryan Monks, who is our administrative technician, and he's going to be providing me with some technical support. And I see he's just joined the chat. Hey, Ryan. This is going to be about a 30-minute presentation with some time for live Q&A afterwards. And then once we've done the Q&A, we will announce the winners of the 2018 Summer Photo Contest that SPRA held this summer from about May until the end of August, or the beginning of June to the end of August. Hi, Shelley. Thanks for joining us today. We're just going to wait a few more minutes, let a few more people join in before we get started with the presentation. Thank you to everybody who has currently joined the session. Hi, Daniel. Thank you for joining us this morning. Feel free to jump into the chat. Anyone who is watching, Ryan will be able to chat back and forth with you. I think we're just going to wait another minute or two, let a few more people join up in the session if they would like to. Once again, my name is Christian Bates Hardy, and I'm a communications consultant with the Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association. And I'm joined today by Ryan Monks, who is our administrative technician. He's going to be providing technical support and also handling any questions that come through during the chat. As you can see, this is going to be a PowerPoint presentation, and not you're not going to be seeing me face to face. And we'll just wait another few minutes, but I think at least by 11:05, if not sooner, we're going to get going. Looks like there's about 10 people in the chat. Just want to say before we get going that this is our first Facebook Live presentation, and I think SPRA's first webinar. Is that right, Ryan? Yep, he's nodding. Yes, we have discussed doing webinars before. We've talked about doing these presentations, but this is the first time that we've ever embarked on this. So your patience, but also your constructive feedback is welcome. We might, I think we might want to do a live show in the future when we have some announcements to make. That's something that has been discussed internally, and I think we're prepared to do that in the future. But for this presentation, we wanted it to be a little bit more formal. The background to this was I was invited last spring to visit the Prairie Central District's volunteer development workshop, which was going to be in Manitou Springs at the resort there. But unfortunately, due to the snowmageddon that we had in early April of 2018, I was not able to leave the city of Regina, where our office is. So this presentation has been adapted from that longer workshop. Okay, we've got about 16 people watching, so I think we're going to get started here. Welcome, everyone, to Influence, Share, and Engage, social media for volunteers in recreation and parks. As I said earlier, my name is Christian Bates-Hardy, and I'm a communications consultant with the Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association. Thank you very much for joining us on our first Facebook Live event. I'm joined in the recording studio, which is actually my office, by Ryan Monks, who is our administrative technician, and he's going to be providing me with some tech support today and handle any questions that come through in the chat. If you have questions, we'll be having a Q&A session after the presentation, but you're welcome to ask your questions as we go through, and then hopefully we can address them later. Otherwise, please feel free to write them down and then bring them up in the chat once the presentation is over. A note about who this presentation is for before I get going. Primarily, this is designed for recreation providers and volunteer coordinators. If you're a communications professional, a lot of this is probably information you're already familiar with, but I'm hoping that this information will be useful to people out there that are recreation practitioners or working with volunteer groups. So what I hope to do today is to influence how you use social media and how you think about social media. I want to share what I know about some recent trends with you, along with some best practices that I've learned from my experience working with social media to promote recreation with SPRA over the last 5.5 years. And lastly, I'd like to engage you directly through facts, examples, and by answering your questions. And hopefully we have 15 to 20 minutes afterwards for questions. So I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions that you might have. So thanks to a lot of the advances made in communications through social media, recreation can really demonstrate its impact on people and communities more directly than ever before. And people in Saskatchewan really are sharing their recreation experiences on social media with audiences that are both private and public. I want you to think about what volunteer participation looked like 10 to 15 years ago, if you're familiar with the sector or if you've participated as a volunteer yourself. I think it's pretty different right now, right? Most of us in the sector tend to agree that volunteerism has changed. Not only have the type of people who are or aren't volunteering have changed, but how volunteerism can be presented to the public or to your community at large has changed too. There's more opportunity than ever before to showcase your volunteer programs and opportunities to the wider world, but you have to find ways to stand out. Social media has also given volunteers new ways to express themselves, to showcase their passion and their impact, and to demonstrate how volunteerism is a part of their life. It's also made it easier for us to connect with volunteers and given recreation providers more tools to hopefully keep them engaged. So here's some of the benefits of getting social. I will say, first of all, that social media will create more work for you if you're working either as a volunteer or with volunteers. But as you can see, there are numerous benefits. I'm not going to go off every item on this list for you, but I encourage you to think about these and see if you can think of any other benefits. If you can think of something that I haven't included here as a volunteer coordinator or recreation provider, please let us know at the end of the chat, as that will be useful, I think, to your peers. What I will tell you is that if you're a volunteer yourself, you're going to spend a lot more time volunteering if you're also managing social media on the side. It's not something that you can seriously engage with for free, and the most effective way of getting your message out to people is ultimately going to be through advertising, and advertising on social media requires budget planning. And I can't stress this enough. You really got to bring your passion and your personality to this, because how much you care about your cause, your volunteers, your programs, and your services is really going to come through in your posts. If this is just a job for you, you're going to have a really boring social media presence. That's the brutal truth. So I want to talk about some current trends. A lot has changed in the last year, even last 2 to 3 years, especially. But I want to talk specifically about some 2018 trends and how they can affect your volunteer communications. What I'm going to highlight right now comes from the 2018 Saskatchewan Social Media Report published by Insightrix Research. We have worked with Insightrix in the past on our Surveying the Field 2017 and the upcoming 2018 surveys, as well as our Recreation and the Quality of Life in Saskatchewan survey that we published in 2016. Each year, Insightrix Research publishes a survey on social media use in the province, and you can purchase it from their website for about $200 roughly, but I'm going to hit some of the highlights here. The main takeaway from this report is that Saskatchewan is way more active on social media than you might think, especially if you're in the Gen X or baby boom demographic. At least 90% of all Saskatchewan residents use at least one social network. 89% of those people use Facebook. And that's across all demographics. That's seniors, young adults, millennials, baby boomers, Gen Xers. I was personally surprised by the number of mature adults that use Facebook regularly, or the fairly consistent numbers across all demographics of people that use Pinterest. You know, that's a particular network that there's sort of an assumption that it's mostly older people that use Pinterest. That's not really the case at all. But speaking of Facebook, I mean, if you're hesitating to use it because you don't think your specific demographic is on there, I really want to challenge that assumption. Some other things that are worth pointing out about Facebook usage in the province, as you can see, it's most popular with what Insightrix termed mainstream youth. Those are people aged 26 to 31, with Generation Xers and mature adults. 83% of Facebook users checked it at least once per day in 2017. So people are checking Facebook very often. The thing about Facebook, though, is that while it is still the #1 social network in Saskatchewan, its growth has really plateaued. It's sort of evened off, and it's not growing any longer compared to other social networks. Interesting stat to note as well is that Facebook use is 5% higher in Saskatchewan than the rest of Canada. But the thing to keep in mind with regards to Facebook is that there has been a major demographic shift in social media usage amongst teenagers and what Insightrix have termed as pioneer youth, or I've heard the term young millennials as well, or Generation Y. These demographics have shifted to using visual networks like Snapchat, YouTube, and Instagram. It's because of this demographic, largely, that YouTube has ascended to be the second most popular social network in Saskatchewan, and I believe in the world as well. And Instagram's popularity, and certainly Snapchat, are also largely due to the demographic shift from that these youth have moved from Facebook and Twitter to these more visual networks. Insightrix has also noted that Twitter, Skype, and LinkedIn use is trending down. Twitter particularly has fallen a lot in the last few years, and I will address that a little bit later in the presentation. Something else to note is that Snapchat use in Saskatchewan is 4% higher than the rest of Canada. So Snapchat, a lot of early adopters here in Saskatchewan, it seems. In terms of the top social networks, you can see here the top 5 networks across all demographics are Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, and Snapchat. As you can see, Twitter is not one of the top 5. It's actually number 6 now. And it is, I think, according to the report, it is about the equal to Google+. So Google+ and Twitter, I think, are sort of tied roughly for 6th place. So that kind of tells you a lot, I think, if Twitter is now the same as Google+. And the Insightrix study did a lot of looking at what people actually want from social media, what they use it for. And the overwhelming majority of people use Facebook, use social media to stay connected with friends and family. And that's pretty consistent across all demographics. That's what people use social media for. But some other things that they use it for that is relevant to, I think, our sector is to be in the know about news. They want to find out what's happening in their community and the world at large. 31% want to find entertainment events, and 26% want to coordinate parties and shared activities. Those two pieces, I think, are really key to the recreation sector to understand that roughly 30% of people are looking for events that are happening in their communities, and 26%, so almost 1 in 4 people, are looking to either coordinate activities or parties in their community or city or town. And I think that's good news for the volunteer sector, because many of the events happening in our communities, the large majority of them are volunteer driven. So if you're routinely hosting events in your community related to your rec or volunteer programs, you really need to start sharing info on social media in any way that you can. Lastly, I just want to point that part about learning about brands or businesses, 18%. Largely, I think as Facebook has become more of a means for advertising, people's attitudes have shifted towards how they perceive brands on Facebook and on social media. So if you are going to be promoting your brand and your business, you have to make sure that it's not coming across as nakedly self-promotional. And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. So one of the things I think that one of the key takeaways from the Insightrix research study is that what you want to do with your social network activity is you really want to show off the people and the events making an impact in your community. If you're a small recreation professional or volunteer organization with a relatively small audience, you're going to need to really connect with your community. In my experience, people really react well when they recognize people, when they see people in our posts that they are aware of, that they know. So keeping the focus on people in your community, I think, is really key. Whether that is a community of people engaged in whatever program that you're running or whatever your organization's cause is, or people in your larger geographic community. Again, people respond and they recognize people in their community, and they'll come out to acknowledge that. I'm always surprised by whenever we share posts related to volunteers in communities across the province, no matter how small the community, people will come out of the woodwork from everywhere to congratulate those people, to acknowledge who they are and the differences and the impact that they made on their community. So one of the takeaway for you should be keeping the focus on people, and then keeping the focus on events, because people are looking for things to do in their communities, and they're also looking for ways to take part. They're looking for ways that they can contribute. In a lot of cases, people who want to contribute maybe don't know how. So again, putting that focus on people and events specifically in your community. Again, like I said before, self-serving businesses and organizations will get ignored. So instead of promoting yourself, promote your community engagement, promote your impact, promote the difference that you're making in people's actual lives. Now, we're going to talk about policy and procedures. I know this is the less exciting part of the presentation, but it's very necessary, especially as we're talking about working with volunteers. I think we need to talk about some practical policy concerns for your organization related to social media. Before you start using social media, you really need to establish the roles and responsibilities of your staff and your volunteers. As I say here, effective policy stops your social profiles from turning into toxic garbage fires. And I think we all recognize that the internet is not always a positive place of sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it can get very toxic and people can get angry very quickly. And an effective policy should hopefully manage that or stop it from happening in the first place. Before you start writing your strategy, I think you need to look at your own internal rules. As I say, write your own rules. Write the policy that makes sense for your organization. You need to establish your roles and responsibilities for staff and volunteers before you just jump in and start using social media, because that's how you get into problems. Start by asking yourself some key questions like, who has access to your accounts? If you have existing accounts, that is. If you don't have existing accounts, who is going to be in charge of them? Can staff and volunteers express personal views? This is an important question. What is the policy in your organization towards staff expressing their own views? What does your organization stand for? Does it have a particular cause? That can sort of lead into these sorts of questions, particularly if your organization is engaged in any kind of advocacy. What do you consider acceptable use of social media? Are you allowed to share memes and funny GIFs and things like that? Again, these things can be used in your marketing and your promotions, but you need to establish the rules around using these sorts of tools before you begin using them. What does the voice of your organization sound like? This is another important thing. What kind of voice do you want to have? What kind of image do you want to portray on social media? You need to think about this before you get going, because ultimately, one way or another, you're going to portray a certain kind of image, and it's better to know what you're going to portray before you start doing that. Thinking about what kind of content adds value to your work is also, again, really useful. And a very important question is, who is responsible for managing a crisis situation when it occurs? I can tell you that we've had situations here that we necessarily weren't totally prepared for. We've since adjusted our policy as we've gone, largely because of situations that have arisen. So knowing who is responsible for addressing a crisis situation, and it could be as simple as somebody complaining, maybe your social media manager, if it's someone other than yourself, is fully empowered to handle those situations. Perhaps it needs to be a manager or the head of your organization to address these questions. These are things that you need to discuss ahead of time. What your effective policy should do is protect your reputation, identify what's considered acceptable behavior on social media, define roles and responsibilities, as I've said, very clearly, make it crystal clear what volunteers and staff are allowed to do. You might not have any staff, so you might be relying 100% on your volunteers to be running your social media. Ultimately, including that clear direction, as I said, of who's responsible for communicating in times of crisis. And this is, I think, going above and beyond, but it's something that I would recommend. Outlining problematic scenarios and how to address them directly in your policy. Ultimately, you can't think of everything, but you should try to think of a couple of situations where something might happen and how are you going to deal with it. So if you've got an event coming up, I suggest you start printing off those photo release forms. Photo and video are something that you need to consider for your policy, as I think capturing photos and capturing video are going to be a clear way that you're going to be able to showcase that community impact that I discussed earlier. You really do need a photo policy because there are legal considerations involved with taking photos of people at events, especially children. Permission from a parent or guardian is 100% required whenever children are involved. A best practice is just to get permission all the time. This might not seem like it's always practical, but if you've got those photo release forms signed, you never have to worry again about the legality of sharing images of people on social media or using them in other marketing and promotions material. That's the thing. If you can get really good photos of people in your community, you can spin that out to posters. It could be social media postcard ads, any number of advertising methods that you could use, and you've got their permission. Just get your participants to sign a release form that explains what any images or video will be used for. A release form is not required, however, to take photos of buildings, outdoor environments, and landscapes. This is something that's actually come up in questions before. I've been asked, do I need a release form to take a picture of a building? No, buildings are in public space. They're fair use. You can take pictures of a building and have no problem sharing that. Same goes for outdoor environments, parks, anything like that. And if people tell you otherwise, they are wrong. But with people, definitely get a release form. In terms of some examples, and by the way, I will be sharing this presentation afterwards and posting the slide deck on the SPRA website at spra.sk.ca, so you can access these links later. We have a photo release form on our website that we use to take to all events, whether it's children or adults involved. Also, I want to draw your attention to this social media policy for volunteers that I got from a website based in the UK called Volunteer Now. It's just a basic template, but I think it's, and I wouldn't say that you should copy this exactly, but it can be a good starting point for your own volunteer policy. Lastly, I just wanted to highlight a policy from the Red Cross, which I quite like, which is their guidelines for staff and volunteers. So it includes both audiences there. So this is a question that it's difficult to answer. I've been asked this before by people who work with volunteers, who should have access to my social media accounts. And really, this kind of depends on the structure and the nature of your organization, and it depends on your security needs. For the sake of your account security, absolutely there needs to be a designated or a designated staff person with the ownership of those accounts. If you are 100% run by volunteers, you have no staff, and you're strictly volunteer-based, then it needs to be a volunteer who you trust. And you definitely need to share those account access permissions with more than one user, so that if that person leaves the organization, then you're not left without access to your accounts. This is something that I know has happened to several people out there in our sector, and at one point it was the case here at SPRA. I think the person that shared or created our original Facebook page didn't have account permission set up for other team members, so when I came on board, we had to start from scratch. So definitely make sure that more than one person has access. If it's a volunteer, it has to be somebody that you trust. Definitely, though, don't allow volunteers to create separate social media accounts in your name or using your branding. I know this is something that other people in the sector have struggled with, where they're putting on an event and then somebody wanted to create like a separate Twitter account using the name of the organization in their name or their bio, even though they were just a volunteer. I would recommend against this unless you have access over their accounts. Instead, I would encourage your volunteers to share their own experiences with their own accounts and tag you in their posts. However, I will give you one word of caution. Before you go ahead and share or retweet or reblog or repost anything that your volunteers say, maybe just give a quick scan of their profiles before you share that material, because you want to make sure that if you're drawing attention to their profiles, they're someone that you actually want to draw attention to. If they're the kind of person that's sharing a lot of questionable material on their accounts, in whatever way that may entail, it could be posts of a political nature, or perhaps they like questionable comedy. Again, if you're sharing that stuff, it is in a way your endorsement of them. You can allow them to tag you, then all of their friends will see what they're involved with, that they're involved with you, that they're making a difference. That's all good, but again, be careful whose material you share. Ultimately, who can access your accounts is something that needs to be stated directly in your social media policy. I know that there are a lot of people out there who think that a phone is a distraction, and that's true in a movie, but not necessarily in a recreation program where people are being active. Ultimately, the younger generations of smartphone users, people in that pioneer youth and teenage demographic, will want to use social media to document what they're doing in their lives. They're doing it all the time, regardless of whether or not you're giving them permission. So instead of discouraging smartphone use, I want you to encourage your volunteers to use social media to promote what they're doing and share their experiences with their followers. User-generated content is something that's becoming increasingly popular in the province and just in the social media world as a whole. That's when people create their own content to promote brands that they're interested in, products that they're interested in. It could be a game that they're playing. Ultimately, I think we want to sort of encourage volunteers to basically start creating user-generated content that can promote the programs and the services and ultimately the impact that we're making on our communities. So I would recommend that instead of discouraging the use of smartphones or social media in programs and events, find ways to engage your volunteers creatively, get them to start sharing in ways that add value to what you do, and make them want to participate. Encourage them to share their experiences, and ultimately lead by example. If you're sharing a lot of material from your courses, from your classes, your programs, it's going to encourage them to do the same. You can even make space for it in the course of your event, give people some time to do it if they want to, or just let them know at the start that if they want to share stuff, it's cool. They're not going to get told to put their phones away or whatever. Ultimately, if it is becoming a distraction, that's something that you need to address then and there. But I would say, like, you should be encouraging them to share their experiences. Empower them. Now let's talk about some best practices for social media. Starting with Facebook. First of all, definitely create a page to raise awareness, post updates, and share events. That's the bare minimum. Bottom line, create a page. However, if you're working with groups of volunteers or a community that you want to get engaged in discussion, then create a group. A group can be a great way to get that two-way communication going and have people give feedback on what you're doing. It's also really good because a group has notification settings that are better than a page. So more people are more likely to see what you post in a group than versus a page. You can also use a group or Facebook Messenger to send notifications directly to volunteers that are engaged with you on Facebook. Bare minimum, you want to post at least twice a day, and those are unique posts. Don't post the same content more than once per day. Although I would say, as I'll get to a little bit later, I think you should post more than twice. Definitely connect your Facebook and Instagram accounts. In case you don't know, Instagram is actually owned by Facebook. So Facebook makes it very easy to connect your Facebook page to an Instagram account, whether it's a personal account or an Instagram for business account. And you want to do this both to get people going to and from both accounts and build up your following there on Instagram as well as Facebook. But also it makes it easier to advertise, as Facebook's rather robust advertising platform allows you to create advertisements both for Facebook and Instagram within Facebook's advertising creator. Definitely set up automatic responses for messages that you get sent, especially if you're a volunteer yourself. You're not probably going to be around to answer questions at all times. You can adjust the settings of when automatic responses are set, so you can have them set to where if you're in an office setting most of the day, you can be responding while you're at work, but have the automatic responses set up to catch those people that are messaging in you in the off hours. That being said, I really recommend you try to reply directly to the person that messaged you within an hour or less, certainly no longer than a day. If you've ever looked at a Facebook page, you might have noticed now that Facebook measures your response time, and it'll say in a matter of a percentage what your response rate is, but also it'll tell you roughly how soon that page is likely to respond to you. And if you keep that response rate high, people are more likely to message you more often because you're seen as somebody who's available, who's there to be engaged with. I highly recommend you boost your Facebook posts with micro-budget ads. I'll talk a little bit more about advertising a little bit later, but it's something that I really recommend doing, especially for a small not-for-profit or a small organization that's volunteer-driven. I know you don't have much of a budget, but boosting those posts, even with small budgets, will really increase your reach. A cheap way to promote what you have coming up is not just to create an event for it, but also to use the cover photo on your main Facebook page to promote those upcoming events that you want to draw attention to. Because everybody who goes to your Facebook page is going to see that cover photo as soon as the page loads. Make sure, though, that you're paying attention to the dimensions of what a cover photo should be, or that it is going to be something that will look good both on desktop and on mobile, since most people are like more people I think than ever before are using mobile to access Facebook directly through the app than on the desktop version. But if you're using a design tool like Canva or Pablo, you're going to be able to find templates that will perfectly size your image for a cover photo. Lastly, really recommend you learn how to use Facebook Insights in order to monitor and track your progress. I'm always surprised by how many Facebook administrators out there don't use Insights to measure their progress. Don't be like them. Really learn how Insights works. You can learn a lot from Insights, including your number of page views, your likes, the number of people you've reached, your post engagements, video views, new followers, and so much more. It's really helpful to find out when your fans are online so you can post when people are most engaged, and also help you learn what types of posts are most engaging. If you've never looked at Insights before, but you've got an existing Facebook page, if you go to your page, if you scroll at the top there, you'll see, I believe it's beside publishing tools. You just click on Insights there. I know it's a lot of information all at once, but just spend some time learning how that works and really start tracking and monitoring your progress using that. If you can't pay for something more robust to help you report on your Facebook metrics, like something like Sprout Social or HubSpot, then definitely get to know how Insights works, because it'll teach you what you're doing well. All right, I want to talk about Instagram. Let's get our grandma on. Instagram is now the third most popular network in Saskatchewan. The rate of engagement on Instagram is so much higher than on other networks like Facebook. It's actually 58 times higher than Facebook and 128 times higher than Twitter. People are much more likely to engage with you on Instagram, to comment on your posts and follow your links and watch your stories as you update them. Instagram is really great at creating this sense of personal connection between you and your followers. Branded hashtags. I know Twitter popularized, I guess, the idea of the hashtag, but they are so much more effective on Instagram than they ever were on Twitter. So really use those hashtags. I know it seems surprising, but according to, I believe it was either a Sprout Social or a Constant Contact report that I read recently, 11 hashtags. 11 hashtags is the ideal number of hashtags to include in an Instagram post. So don't be afraid to spam those hashtags. You can create a business profile on Instagram separate from your personal account, as I said. Definitely add a location to your post. This also came from Sprout Social. Posts with a location get 79% more engagement than posts without. So again, if you're trying to reach people in your specific community, definitely make sure you're including your location there. Instagram makes it very easy when you share a post to share on Facebook and Twitter as well. So make sure that those accounts are connected so you can cross-post to them. Instagram is great for showcasing little video ads, but make sure you're filming them vertically, as again, people are watching them through a smartphone screen. They're not going to be letterboxed like most people tend to shoot video. Also, keep those videos short. I think 15 seconds is ideal. Between 15 and 30 is about perfect. You don't want to have it be too long. Definitely add multiple updates to your story whenever you can. If you're not familiar with stories, they are short little images or videos that you can post. They only last for about a day. But the nice thing about stories is they appear at the top of the Instagram app. And the more story updates, the more people are likely to engage with your story. And the more times you post a story, the more people are going to see that you've updated your story on the app. So keep checking, keep updating your story so that you'll be up front and top of the app for people to see. Because Instagram is like Twitter in that it's constantly evolving, and people are likely to miss posts if they're not checking it very often. Studies have shown that users are more engaged on weekdays, but again, I recommend you check your analytics and measure and monitor when your audiences are most engaged with you. Instagram is very personal. It's great at creating a personal connection. So one of the things about Instagram usage is people can tell very easily when you're being very phony and very businesslike. So again, try to draw people in with your account. Be personable, be likable. And Instagram is only continuing to grow and really dominate the social media space throughout this year. And I suspect we'll see that continue into 2019. I just wanted to draw attention to a couple different nonprofit organizations in Saskatchewan using Instagram, starting with the Life Saving Society. Just want to showcase. So as you can see, the Life Saving Society only has about 171 posts, but they now have 209 followers. So that's almost at a rate of a follower per post, which is pretty great. And, you know, they're showing their engagement out there in the community. People are doing stuff. They're doing sidewalk chalk. They're drawing attention to lotteries, which is great. We love seeing that. They're drawing attention to events that are happening. They're doing funny stuff here, like with their life-saving dummy, to let people know that they're not going to be there. So they have a variety of things that they're doing, but they're just getting started. Now you look at the Trails Association, and wow, they've got 73 posts, but over 1,000 followers. And they're using their account largely to draw attention to various trails throughout the province, people enjoying Saskatchewan's trails and what it has to offer. So anybody who's in the park sector, this is something that you can basically replicate, and just look at the engagement that they've had with hardly any posts at all. 73 posts, but 1,000 followers. And then we've got the Science Center, who's just absolutely killing it. They've got over 2,000 followers with 1,332 posts. So almost at a rate of 2 to 1 in terms of followers per posts. So definitely check those pages out to get some ideas for what you can do. We also ran a contest this summer using the Sask Parks and Rec hashtag, which basically hadn't been used prior to us using it. And we got over 321 posts to this new hashtag for people submitting to our photo contests. So again, check this out in the presentation later, get some ideas for how maybe you can start using Instagram to promote your programs and services. And remember, Instagram is rising in popularity with that under 30 demographic. So you really should get started on using this network now and catch up a little bit rather than being left behind as those young adults changing media habits continue to really kind of change how we share our messages. So let's talk a little bit about Snapchat. Snapchat is now the 5th most popular overall network in Saskatchewan, but it's the #1 network with young people. It's the #1 network with teens and the 2nd most popular network with young adults aged 18 to 25. Over 200 million snaps are sent every single day worldwide. Snapchat is really great at creating interest in what you do behind the scenes, but it requires passion, a lot of engagement, and a sense of humor. Nobody wants to engage with a Snapchat account that isn't funny or going to provoke some kind of reaction out of people. The major problem, of course, with Snapchat is that everything is temporary. So the thing with Snapchat is you want to, I think, more encourage your youth that you're working with to send snaps to their followers and friends about the programs they're participating in. Let the youth do the promotion for you. You can, however, create your own filters for special events or programs that you're running, and then encourage your participants to use those filters to snap themselves, and then, again, share it with their friends and their followers. Definitely, however, if you're using or if you're running programs with youth and young people, create a Snapchat for business account. Make sure your location is enabled so people can find you. Encourage people to start following you who are in their programs with you. Get a unique QR snap code for your website, and make sure that everyone can view your snaps and stories. Again, the problem with Snapchat is you really have to be engaged. If you've got a social media champion or a Snapchat addict that works with you, definitely tap them to be running this account, because it requires a lot of engagement. SPRA, I can say, has not really gone into the Snapchat world yet because it's difficult to justify its business case for us. But if you're working with youth, this is a must-have. I want to talk a little bit about Twitter, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's still the 6th most popular network in Saskatchewan, and it's still the best network for sharing news and announcements, but also for engaging with news media personalities, whether they be journalists or bloggers or people on the radio or TV. It's still the best way to share and receive news in a 24/7 capacity, especially since Facebook recently changed its own policies towards how it shares the news. However, Twitter has become somewhat of a toxic place. It's a very negative social environment. Again, I think people have really started to reconsider their usage of Twitter, which is why its stock has fallen so much. There are far more men on Twitter than women, and that's not necessarily to say that it's men that are entirely causing the problem. Although certainly, I think when we see the rise in politically speaking of certain hate groups, Twitter has become a platform of choice, and Twitter's policies towards abusive users have not really cleaned it up at all. So if you're going to have a Twitter account, I think you need to really consider only following people that add value to your organization and what you do. Again, try to create that supportive social environment, connecting again with people in your community who are going to champion what you do and advocate what you do and want to engage with your volunteerism, not people who are going to take away from your experience. And again, be aware that Twitter usage overall in the province is trending downwards. So the audience that you find there might not be reflective of the people you're actually trying to reach. If you have an existing Twitter account like we do, where you have several thousand followers and what you're doing there is working for you, then by all means, continue to use Twitter. So what social networks should you use? This is a question I get asked a lot. People want to know just, okay, tell me what to use. Well, ultimately, the golden rule is go where your audience is. I would recommend starting out with the big 3, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, particularly if you're making videos. Again, YouTube is hugely popular amongst all age demographics, but that rising younger demographic really loves YouTube. And if you can start getting videos out there to reach that demographic, the more power to you. But you need to start making video content regardless, whether you're posting it on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Again, if you have Twitter and you're still growing a following, good, keep using it. If you're working with youth, definitely start thinking about how you can incorporate Snapchat and Instagram into your program marketing. But ultimately, experiment. Give yourself that room to experiment with different networks, see where your audience is, try to find out what they're most engaged with, and then focus on those. Because I know it can be a lot of work to split your attention between multiple networks. If something's not working, your audience isn't there, then it's time to move on to something different. And timing is very important. People ask me also, when is the right time to post? Ultimately, the right time is when your audience is most engaged. And you can really only find this out through experimentation by trying to be very engaging and posting, often. To start with, I would say try posting at breakfast. When do you have breakfast? Around 7, 7:30, 6:30, between 6 and 8? Definitely try and post at least once to start off with in that time frame. I mean, think about your own daily social media habits. When you wake up, when do you check your phone? Do you check your phone as soon as you get out of bed, after you shower, when you're having breakfast? Post that at that time. Then post during your coffee breaks, 10, 10:15, 3 o'clock, 3:15, 3:30, whenever you take your afternoon and your morning breaks. And then once again later on in the evening, before you go to bed, after dinner, sometime between 7 and 9, 7 and 10 p.m., and just see what works. Try posting at least 4 times a day on each network, and then see what people are engaging with the most. You might be surprised at what times people are checking your material. Ultimately, you need to measure and then adjust your posting schedule as you need to. So if you want to engage and recruit volunteers, let them know. Really ring the alarm. Put out the call for volunteers on every social network that you use. Don't just rely on one, because you never know where they're going to see your message. Use every network that you have to engage them. Post as often as you can. Publicly thank people who answer your call. And if you need more volunteers, keep putting out that call by telling people exactly how many volunteers you need and how much of an impact their participation will make to your event. Again, this isn't an area where you can't be dispassionate, or where you can be dispassionate. You need to bring your energy and your passion to this and make sure people know how badly they're needed, because this is going to make them want to engage with you. It's going to make them want to bring their friends along. Really do this. If you see popular events like, say, the Regina Folk Festival, really good example of people who put out the call for volunteers very strongly, who engage with their volunteers on social. The key to engaging volunteers as well is through creating really awesome events and sharing them as much as you can. Starting with Facebook, it has to be available on Facebook if it's an event, bare minimum, but then sharing it on every other network that you can also do to grab people's attention. But it has to be something that people want to be a part of as well. Think about that. Start thinking about how you're marketing your programs. Are you marketing programs that people actually want to be a part of? Do they see themselves in it? Is it something that's going to make a difference in their community? And again, show your gratitude. Call people out. Say thank you. Give them shout outs. Specifically, tag them in your posts. If somebody volunteers for an event, let other people know that they're volunteering. Show your gratitude. Reward and thank your volunteers for their involvement. I mentioned this earlier, but your content can't be all about you. It should actually be only 20% about you. The rest of it should inform, educate, and entertain. Now, there is a way around this. You can, of course, be promoting your programs and marketing and promoting promoting what you do, but doing it in a way that's more showcasing impact, showcasing the people, keeping the focus on your community. These things will show that what you're doing matters without just telling people I'm important, pay attention to me, So definitely, again, try to keep your content fun, engaging, entertaining, and yeah, you can share the odd meme or two. If you can find a way to make these things humorous or engaging, and still kind of draw attention to what you're doing, or adding, or making sure that it's adding value to your social media activities, and by all means, go ahead. One of my favorite social media accounts is the Facebook page for Regina's Takeaway Gourmet, which largely sells kind of cheeses and artisanal baked goods, things like that. And yeah, a lot of what they do is all about promoting their business, but they do it in a way that's fun, that again draws you into it and makes you want to go there and try out some delicious cheeses. It's not just about the product that they're selling, it's about the personality that they're selling. Social marketing isn't free, and this isn't news to any social media marketer out there, but it might be to some of you rec coordinators and practitioners. You're going to need a budget. Organic reach has declined greatly. It's been on the decline since 2014, but ultimately Facebook's goal really for businesses, I think, is to flatline it completely. At this point, less than 10% of your Facebook followers see your posts without ads. It's actually, I think, more like around 4 and 6%. We've noticed particularly in the last year or two, our organic reach has dive bombed. We've got about 4,000 followers on our Facebook page, and I would say somewhere between 1 and 800 see our average post that isn't boosted with ads. Facebook last year, pardon me, I wanted to have a sip of my coffee. Last year, Facebook introduced a change to their algorithm to emphasize what they call meaningful engagement. So person-to-person interactions, particularly between friends and family. This also has to do with the kind of engagement that your posts are having. So posts that have replies unique comments or asking questions that aren't just sort of baiting the audience, these posts tend to get shared more often. They reach more people. Also, pages that use Messenger or live video like what we're doing right now are more likely to reach more people than the average post. So video and live video have really also kind of been driving these algorithmic changes where reach is concerned. But if you're posting something and you need to share it, whether it's a post or an event, you really need to boost them and then target them specifically to different locations, interests. Facebook has really expanded how much you can dig deep into people's interest categories and their demographics these days. It's not perfect, but you're much more likely to be able to pinpoint and reach certain amounts of people. One problem with this, however, is you can define your audience too narrowly and to the point where they won't actually accept your ad because it's not worth it to them or to you to share it. So again, you need to find that sweet spot between targeting people that will be interested in your content, but not going so narrow that you can't actually share the ad. Definitely, I would say if you're building up your Instagram following, make sure that your advertisement is being shared on Instagram as well as Facebook. Definitely boost the reach of your videos. Videos already have more reach than your average post, but a boosted video will reach far more people. And it can be a small cost of, say, $25, $10, $10. $8 is the absolute minimum you can budget for a 7-day ad campaign. It comes out to about, I think, $1.13 a day. So, but if you can budget even like $25 or $50 to boost a video, you could be sharing that potentially to tens of thousands of people rather than hundreds or thousands. So again, really stretch your budget over time. If you only have $100 for the entire year to promote things on Facebook and Instagram, then go for the short wins, go for the small campaigns. Promote your events that are happening in your community, things that definitely people can register for online or buy tickets for, and do it in short 7-day campaigns or 1-day campaigns of small budgets. Now, here are some free tools that I just wanted to draw attention to that you can use to get started measuring and monitoring your progress, starting with Hootsuite. Hootsuite is kind of the beginner's social media dashboard. It's a great little tool that you can use for free. I think you can monitor up to 3 accounts with a free version. So it's a great way to keep all of your social networks in one place. You can post all from within Hootsuite's service. It's browser-based, and it's a great way to start monitoring and measuring what you're doing on social media. We use a more robust and expensive version of this called Sprout Social, but you can get a lot of monitoring out of Hootsuite. Another thing that you can use if you're just getting started is Social Mention, which is a real-time social listening tool. You can type in a keyword or the name of a person or a hashtag and find out who's talking about that stuff. Bitly is something that is largely used just to shorten links. However, one of the nice features that Bitly has is actually can track click-throughs. So you can share a link on Twitter or on Facebook, and then you can see how many people have actually clicked on that link and gone to your website, your blog, whatever you're trying to direct that traffic towards. Lastly, but not least, is setting up Google Alerts. Definitely set up a Google Alert for your organization so that whenever somebody mentions you online, whether it's in a news story or on a blog post, you're getting an alert sent to your email saying that people have been talking about you. We have Google Alerts set up so that if somebody's talking about SPRA in the news, we know about it. And it's free. So now that we talked about some best practices, let's talk about putting those to the test and planning a short social media campaign. I'm not talking about an overarching strategy, just a quick, short, event-based plan. The first step is to literally think of everything. I'm kidding, but seriously, brainstorm. If you're just getting started, start thinking about all the things you might want to discuss, your overarching goal, what it is you're trying to achieve. the objectives that you're going to try to reach your goal. Any networks, tools, apps, software, and hardware that you're going to need in order to make this happen. What kinds of posts you're going to share, supporting content, i.e. photos and videos, what key messages you have and supporting messages. If you're an organization and you're sharing information about programs and services, I guarantee you that you have key messages to use. How many people do you want to reach? Just come up with an estimate. You might not make it, but at least start thinking about what's possible for you. What does success look like? How many people would you like to engage? Do you want people commenting on it? How many people do you think is reasonable to comment on your posts? Again, you might not get those people, but it's good to start thinking about what your desired level of reach and engagement are. Who are your audiences? That's crucial. You should know who your audiences are already if you're running programs and services in your community, but maybe you haven't thought about that. Or maybe your audiences on different networks are different, and it's worth mentioning, okay, on Twitter, our audience is this kind of person, this age group. They aren't going to come to our programs, so it's not worth messaging them. Versus on this network, we can find our key audience, so we're going to use this one instead. So again, think about your audience and think about your audiences on those networks. Timing and frequency. Again, what time are you going to post? How frequently are you going to do it? Are you going to support it with some kind of budget so that this is not just a timing and a frequency thing, but it's also something that's boosted and it's going to be shared over, say, a 7 or a 14-day campaign? Are there any influencers in your community who you can reach out to potentially draw more attention to your event? Can you liaison with these influencers and hopefully get them to drive some attention to what you're doing in your community? Do you have any champions in your community that you know are going to share your information, and can you maybe convince them to share it a little bit more? Are there any potential challenges or controversies that you might encounter? Is there a reason why somebody might have something negative to say about what you're promoting or what you're sharing? It's good to think about that before you jump in. Again, coming up with that budget is important. And lastly, how are you going to measure success? What does that look like to you? Now, designing social media ads that are attractive and eye-catching are really going to help you succeed. You're going to need to give yourself a visual identity that stands out from the crowd. Maybe if you're working with a larger non-for-profit organization, you already have a clear brand and identity. So this isn't necessarily advice for you. This is for the smaller, the single or person in a small community who is trying to reach a smaller group of people and doesn't have those existing branding materials to work with. So if you can't afford Photoshop, that's okay, because there are a number of low-cost or free alternatives to get you started. These are just a few of them. These are just a few that I use. I use Canva just about every single week, maybe multiple times a week. Canva is really great. You go to canva.com. It's a browser-based design tool. It's basically like Photoshop for dummies. And the great thing about Canva is, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there are templates on Canva for every kind of social network out there, and different kinds of template sizes. So you can create a cover photo or an event photo or a social media ad for Instagram. Any number of things, Canva can do it. It's super easy, drag and drop. You can teach yourself how to use it in 5 to 10 minutes. It's free to sign up for. Highly, highly recommend using this if you don't have Photoshop skills. Adobe Spark is another good tool to use. This one, there is a monthly cost associated with it, but you can use Spark to create social media graphics as well as short little videos, whether they be slideshow presentations like what we created for the 2018 Recreation in Canada Forum, that Sask Trivia video that I made, you might have seen. I made that using Adobe Spark. It's, again, super easy, drag and drop browser-based application. The only problem with Spark is when you're making videos, they can't really be any longer than a minute or two, or the browser tends to crash. Pablo is very similar to Canva. It's another great browser-based tool for creating social media postcards and graphics. Easily and PictoChart, also great little software tools that are browser-based to get you designing for free. So certainly check these out if you're in need of designing things quickly and cheaply for social media, but that still stand out and grab people's attention. Once you start using Canva, if you've used it before, you already know what I'm talking about. But once you start using Canva, it's really easy to tell who's using it and who isn't. Which does say a little bit about Canva's style, but I think you can still use it to stand out. So write down your campaign ahead of time, especially if you're just getting started. But keep it simple, just straightforward. Identify your goal, your objectives, your audience, your tools, your budget, and your measurement metric. So for example, say you were going to try and gain 100 followers on Instagram. Your objectives, you're going to post a new photo every day. You're going to use a minimum of six hashtags per post, but you're going to try to shoot for that 11 because you know that 11 is the best. You're going to support this with a 7-day ad campaign every month until you've reached your goal of 100 followers. It probably won't take more than 1 month if you're going to do this. Again, your audience, who are you trying to reach? Your participants, some volunteers, and then the general public. Tools, you're going to use the Instagram app and a connected Facebook account with a budget of $8 a month. And what are you going to measure? You're going to measure the number of likes per photo, the number of engagements you get every week, and the number of followers you have at the end of each 7-day campaign. Again, this is just an example, but just keep it simple. Write it down so that you know what you're trying to do. So here's an example of a real short campaign that we ran in December of 2017. We wanted to raise awareness of the SPRA Volunteer of the Year Award in Saskatchewan. We wanted to show gratitude for our volunteers and thank them for their contribution to recreation and parks. We did this for every one of our volunteers, but specifically we wanted to make people aware that we have a Volunteer of the Year Award. And we wanted to showcase Marion, that's our Volunteer of the Year right here on the right. We wanted to, again, say thank you to her for her contribution to volunteerism in her community. So our goal was to raise awareness of the awards with a 10-day Facebook campaign, and we were going to spend a total of $12 whole on this campaign. Nice and cheap. And the audience was pretty broad. Men and women, ages 16 to 45, living in the communities of Biggar, Hafford, Caribert, Lloydminster, North Battleford, Paradise Hill, Rosetown, Turtleford, and Unity. And we shared a photo of her holding her award along with a nice little bio indicating her huge impact on the community where she is from. We didn't have Instagram at the time. We just actually recently created an Instagram account this spring. If we had Instagram, we definitely would have ran this campaign on Instagram as well. And the result was that with $12 promoting this post, we reached over 8,000 people, which is double our current followers on Facebook. But what I was really pleased to see were a total of 415 reactions and 86 comments. People came from all over to congratulate Marion and thank her for her contributions to her community. So in my eyes, for a $12 ad, this was hugely successful. It raised a lot of awareness about the Volunteer of the Year Award. These were just the people that we reached directly. There were a lot of shares on this, so it ultimately reached more people than just that 8,000. As a second example, I want to show something that we did for an event, or for rather 2 events, where we were taking registrations. We were trying to get people to register for 2 new prenatal and postnatal fitness certification courses that we were running in Regina and Saskatoon. This had a very specific audience. We were looking for women who were either in the prenatal or postnatal stages of pregnancy. They had to be existing fitness leaders. So at Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association, we have, of course, fitness leadership certification, so you can become a certified fitness leader. We needed these people to be existing fitness leaders, which really, again, narrowed our audience down significantly. So they had to be from Regina or Saskatoon or the surrounding area, and then they had to be an existing fitness leader. So we look for people with an interest in fitness and wellness, and then again, people with an interest in pregnancy. We ran 2 14-day Facebook campaigns with a total budget of $30. So about $15 for each, or sorry, that would be $30 per ad. So about $60 total for a very specific kind of campaign. And ultimately, while we didn't reach as many people as we reached with the Volunteer Year of the Year award, only 3,009 people, both of those classes were fully registered for before the campaign ended. In fact, both of those classes were filled within a few days of that campaign beginning. So ultimately, those ads reached the people that they were trying to get to. We had direct links to registration on the events that were both on Facebook, and people signed up for those events and they registered for them. So I think this is an example for those people in the smaller communities who are doing something maybe more specialized to a smaller audience. You can still successfully get people to register for those events that you're trying to put on, even if you're not necessarily reaching tens of thousands of people. Ultimately, making other people care about your cause, about your organization, about your programs and services, it really takes time, but it's worth it. It's worth it to make our communities more connected. This is a photo. I love this picture. It's from one of our Forever in Motion courses that we ran last year. Forever in Motion, of course, is a province-wide program that helps get older adults more active and really does work to create a sense of community amongst active seniors living in Saskatchewan. And keeping our communities connected is ultimately what recreation is all about. Thanks very much for watching this Facebook Live presentation. Again, this is the first time we've done something like this. I'd like to now ask if people have any questions that they would like to answer in the chat. I'm just going to address a few of the comments here that I can see right now in the chat. Stevie Ray says, wish Instagram would remove the requirement of having a linked Facebook page to create an Instagram business profile. I agree. It's one of those things where, in some ways it's nice that Facebook and Instagram are so connected, but at the same time, having that linked Facebook page, if you don't want Facebook or you don't need it, is a bit of a hindrance. And Chantal in the chat says, I strongly recommend Canva. I've been using it a lot for work and it's very user-friendly. It is. It took me all of, maybe 5 minutes to figure out how to use Canva. It's very great. And it's great practice for Photoshop. Like if you start using Canva, if you figure out how to use Canva or Pablo, eventually you'll be able to take those skills and start using Adobe Photoshop. Photoshop also, I should mention, has a more stripped down and cost-friendly version called Photoshop Elements, which you can also practice on. And once you learn how to use Adobe Photoshop, you can transfer those skills to other Adobe products like InDesign or like Illustrator. But please, yeah, do ask me any questions that you have in the chat, and I will answer them. Thank you to everybody who has attended, those of you who are from the districts, the sport, culture, recreation districts, and those of you who are just curious. I hope you learned something in this session. Shelly Thon Shikowski has a question. She says, release forms for pictures. Is a release required for animal pictures where the animals are owned by people, e.g., cows and horses? I don't believe so. But I'm not a lawyer, so I will have that question forwarded to Nancy, our information and research services consultant, and I'll try to find that out for you, Shelley. But I don't believe that like animals. Like say you were to take a picture of somebody's dog in a public park. That's fair use. You can do that. Horses and cows might be a bit different. Eileen Martin asks, is there a user-friendly site for video? Well, as I mentioned earlier, Adobe Spark is a great little tool that you can use for creating videos. You can import video clips that you have, or you can drag and drop photos to create like nice little slideshow videos. That is an option. Another thing that you could use for videos is a nice little site called Animoto, which is another really easy to use browser-based video editor. You can create either slideshows or actual video presentations in Animoto. Animoto is not free. There is a slight cost involved, but it's still pretty affordable for nonprofits. Also, Windows Movie Maker. A lot of people, a lot of professionals I know, they don't necessarily use Final Cut Pro, but they do use Windows Movie Maker, and every Windows PC has Movie Maker already installed. There's a little bit more of a learning curve involved there, but I would recommend if you're interested in editing video, YouTube is your best friend. There are teenagers out there making tutorials for how to edit video on YouTube. So definitely if you have questions about editing video, definitely check out YouTube. Elizabeth Heatcoat asks, will this be posted to your feed after the live presentation? Yes, this video will be available on the Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association Facebook page, and the slide deck will also be posted later on this afternoon on our website at spra.sca.ca. Jessica Bickford corrected me. Windows no longer supports Movie Maker. That is indeed a bummer. Apple users definitely use iMovie. There are a number of free or low-cost video editors. Some of them have slipped my mind, but I actually just answered this question for somebody recently. So if you have any questions about these kinds of tools, do feel free to send me an email. My email address is right there. Again, if you have any questions at all about social media, whether it's video editors, design tools. I have time for a few more questions if there are any more. Otherwise, if there aren't any more questions, we will get into announcing the winners of our summer photo contest. We'll just wait a few more seconds if anybody has any last minute questions or comments. And it looks like some of the people that were viewing earlier have dropped off. So I think we'll move into the announcement of the winners and runners-up of our 2018 Summer Photo Contest. We started this contest in early June. It ran until just last week, and the prizes were 5 gift certificates to Flamin Fitness, which has locations across the province. Those are gift certificates of $50 value, and a grand prize of a 2018 GoPro Hero. And our winner of the 2018 Summer Photo Contest is Derek and Carla Yari. Congratulations. Absolutely love this photo. Our runners-up, we have Renante Lorca, Matthew Serrano, Monica Jordan, Jay Paulo Tan, and Jenelina Marie. Thank you again to all of you who submitted to our summer photo contest. It was really difficult selecting a winner, but we're very happy with all the submissions that we received, and we thank you for sharing your recreation experiences with us. Thank you again to everybody who tuned into this presentation. We're going to end the live now, and it will be available as a video on our Facebook page. Again, thank you. If you have any other questions or feedback, please feel free to send it to my email address there on the presentation. Oh, thank you for the thumbs up. Okay, goodbye.